It was a quiet spring morning in the small town of Willow Creek. Cherry blossoms floated lazily through the air, petals drifting onto the paved paths, where children laughed and families strolled with their dogs. A sense of peace hung over the town, almost as if time itself had slowed for just a moment, but that peace shattered in an instant. From the edge of the woods emerged a German shepherd, limping, his coat matted and dusted with dew. In his jaws he carried something wrapped tightly in a blanket. Passers-by stopped, confused. Was it a toy? A lost bundle of laundry? Then the blanket shifted and a soft, frail cry broke the morning calm. A baby. Panic and awe collided as onlookers froze. Some reached for their phones. Others stepped back, terrified. But one woman, Tara, off duty and walking her own dog, felt something deeper. She knelt, speaking gently, and realized that this dog, this brave animal, was more than just a rescuer. He was a guardian, carrying a life across an invisible battlefield of danger and instinct. This is not just a story about a dog saving a baby. It's a story about loyalty, courage, and the bonds between humans and animals that transcend words. By the end, you won't just remember Rex, you'll feel him. Spring had just begun to touch the edges of the little American town of Willow Creek. The morning air shimmered with warmth and promise, carrying the faint scent of blooming cherry blossoms that lined the park's winding paths. Children's laughter floated through the air as parents sat on benches with steaming cups of coffee, watching dogs chase frisbees across the grass. The world, for a moment, seemed perfectly at peace, as if time itself had paused to listen to the music of life returning after a long, cold winter. A soft breeze stirred the petals loose from the branches. They drifted like pink snowflakes, landing gently on strollers, picnic blankets, and the rippling surface of the lake. A young couple walked hand in hand. A jogger stopped to retie his shoe. Somewhere, a golden retriever barked playfully, tugging at its leash. Everything about that morning whispered ordinary happiness. And then, just beyond the tree line, something moved. At first, no one noticed. A dark shape lingered in the shadow between the oaks. A pair of golden brown eyes caught the light. Cautious, unblinking, and tired, a German shepherd emerged slowly from the woods, his coat matted with dirt and streaked with dried blood. He limped, his left paw dragging faintly across the path. But what froze the crowd wasn't his condition. It was what he carried. Clamped carefully in his jaws was a blanket-wrapped bundle, small and fragile, the fabric darkened with mud and torn at the edges. The shepherd moved with a strange kind of grace, determined, trembling, yet careful with every step as though guarding something sacred. "Is that a dog?" someone whispered. "Looks hurt. What's it got in its mouth?" Another's voice asked. Phones came out. A few children pointed, laughing at first, thinking it was just another playful scene in the park. But the laughter faded as the shepherd reached the open space near the fountain. He stopped, panting, eyes darting between the people and the sound of distant traffic. His tail hung low, his ears alert, torn between fear and purpose. The dog lowered his head slightly, his muscles quivering under his thin coat. The blanket in his jaws twitched, just a tiny movement, barely noticeable, but then a faint cry broke the silence. It was not the bark of another dog, not the mewl of a kitten. It was the unmistakable, heart-stopping cry of a baby. For a moment, the entire park froze. The jogger dropped his phone. A mother gasped and pulled her child close. The young couple stood motionless, disbelief written across their faces. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. The shepherd whined softly, shifting his weight, looking around as if searching for someone or something. He took a step forward, then another, still carrying the bundle with astonishing gentleness. His eyes were wan, glistening with exhaustion, and something deeper, something human-like. "Oh my God, that's a baby!" someone screamed. Panic rippled through the crowd. People began shouting for help. fumbling with their phones, calling 911. A man tried to approach, his hands raised cautiously, but the shepherd growled. Low and deep. It wasn't the growl of anger, it was warning, protective, primal, the kind that said, "Stay back, this one is mine to guard." The man froze in place. "Easy, boy, easy," Sa murmured, backing away. The baby's cry grew louder now, piercing the morning calm like a siren of life and desperation. The sound drew more onlookers. A few police officers from a nearby station heard the commotion and began running toward the park, their radios crackling. Meanwhile, the shepherd's legs began to tremble. He stumbled once, almost falling, then regained balance. He turned in circles as if confused, as though unsure where safety lay. The blood on his suit had begun to crust, and each breath came harder than the last. From the back of the crowd, a woman's voice rose, calm, steady, gentle. "Let me through, please. I'm a vet nurse." Her name was Tara Linwood, and unlike the others, she didn't shout or rush. She walked slowly, crouching as she approached. Her voice dropped to a whisper, soft enough to be carried by the wind. "Hey, buddy, it's okay, you did good." Rex, though she didn't yet know his name, turned his head toward hers. Their eyes met for the first time, one human, one animal, bound by an unspoken recognition of pain. He let out a faint whimper. The blanket shifted again, revealing a small, pale hand beneath the folds. Tara's heart clenched. She could see faint scratches on the baby's skin. Soot, ash, and streaks of dried blood. "Oh, no," she breathed. "You poor thing." Someone shouted, "The ambulance is on the way." But Tara didn't wait. She inched closer, hands out, speaking in a low voice meant only for the dog. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm not going to take her. I'm going to help." Rex's ears flicked forward. He tilted his head as if weighing her words. For a long second, no one moved. Then, with a shuddering breath, he lowered the bundle to the ground. The crowd gasped again, cameras clicking, but Tara ignored them. She slipped off her jacket and carefully wrapped it around the baby, checking for a pulse. It was faint, but there, still alive. She looked up at the shepherd again. His breathing was shallow, his chest rising and falling in uneven rhythm. He tried to take a step toward her, but staggered, almost collapsing. Tara's voice trembled. "You saved her, didn't you?" Rex blinked slowly, his tail giving the faintest twitch. For the first time, she noticed the burn marks along his flank, the singed fur, the smell of smoke still clinging to him. He had come from somewhere terrible, and somehow, against all odds, he had carried this child to safety. The sirens drew closer. Red and blue lights flickered against the trees. People began clearing a path as paramedics rushed in. Tara lifted the baby into her arms, her coat pressed tightly around the small body. As the medics surrounded her, she glanced back at the shepherd. He stood motionless for a moment, watching, as if making sure the baby was finally safe. Then his legs gave way. The great dog collapsed onto the grass. Tara cried out and ran to him, but his eyes were still open, soft, unafraid, locked on the child in her arms. The ambulance doors slammed shut. The park, moments ago alive with laughter, now fell silent except for the distant hum of an engines and the whisper of wind through cherry blossoms. And in that silence, a story began, one that would spread across the world, carried on every screen, every headline, and every heart that still believed in miracles. The baby's cry echoed through the park like a fragile alarm bell, raw and haunting. What had once been laughter and birdsong now twisted into chaos. "Call 911, someone shouted, voice trembling. A dozen hands went to their phones at once. Parents pulled their children closer. Dogs barked and strained against their leashes, their instincts mirroring the tension in the air. The German shepherd, mud-caked, trembling and bleeding, stood over the small bundle as though guarding a treasure too precious for the world to touch. His teeth were bared now, not in aggression, but in pure feral determination. The sound that rumbled from his chest, was deep and guttural, a low warning that froze anyone who dared step forward. "Stay back!" a man yelled, holding out his arm to keep the crowd at a distance. But curiosity was stronger than fear. People leaned forward, eyes wide, whispering in disbelief. A few were crying already, not sure why. Something about the scene, the contrast between violence and tenderness, struck at a place too deep for words. The dog growled again, his body trembling, his front paw bleeding onto the pavement. He was exhausted, panting, every breath a battle. Yet he stood his ground, hovering over the moving blanket, ears flicking toward every sound. Through the chaos, one voice cut through, a calm, clear tone that seemed to slow the panic. "Easy, hey, easy, boy." It was Tara Linwood, a young veterinary nurse who'd just been walking home after a night shift. Still wearing her scrubs under her coat, she instinctively read the signs others missed. The trembling hind leg, the dilated pupils, the shallow breaths of a dog, both terrified and loyal beyond comprehension. She saw not a threat but a guardian on the edge of collapse. Tara lowered herself slowly to the ground, palms open, eyes soft. "It's okay," she whispered. "You did good, buddy. I'm not going to hurt her." The crowd murmured behind her, phones still raised. "Lady, get back," a man warned. "That thing's dangerous." Tara didn't look away. "No," she said quietly. "He's scared." The shepherd's growl deepened for a second, then faded into a low whine. He blinked slowly, head lowering, nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air between them. That single moment, two beings suspended between instinct and trust, silenced everything else. Even the children stopped crying. Then Tara saw it, a small streak of dark red trailing down the edge of the blanket. She froze. Her pulse quickened. She looked closer, past the tangle of fabric, past the soot marks, and saw a tiny hand, pale but twitching. The baby's fingers curled weakly, searching the air for warmth. Her breath caught. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice cracking. "The baby's alive." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone started crying. The nearest woman dropped to her knees, hands over her mouth. Tara moved a little closer, slow and deliberate. "It's okay, boy," she murmured again. "Let me help." The shepherd's ears flicked back. His chest heaved. For a heartbeat it looked like he might lunge, but instead he took one step backward, tail low, eyes locked on her face. It was enough. Tara reached the bundle and carefully peeled back a corner of the blanket. A faint cry escaped, a thin, trembling sound, but alive. "Baby girl," she breathed, tears filling her eyes. "Hang on, sweetheart." The infant's skin was mottled with soot. There was a cut on her forehead and her lips quivered as she whimpered weakly. Tara felt for a pulse. It fluttered against her fingers like a dying bird's heartbeat, fragile but real. Behind her the wail of approaching sirens grew louder. The flashing red and blue lights flickered between the trees, painting the cherry blossoms in ghostly colors. "She's breathing," Tara shouted, her voice breaking. "She's alive." Cheers and sobs erupted all at once. A man dropped to his knees, clutching his chest. A woman whispered a prayer under her breath, but Tara's attention stayed on the dog. He was swaying now, his legs giving out from under him. The adrenaline that had carried him here was gone. His sides rose and fell rapidly, his breaths shallow and uneven. Tara reached out her hand again. "Hey, stay with me." The shepherd blinked slowly. For the briefest second his gaze softened, those deep amber eyes meeting hers with something almost human, gratitude, relief. Then his head dipped lower, his muzzle brushing the baby's blanket as if to make sure she was still there, still safe. The first police cruiser skidded to a halt by the curb. Officers jumped out shouting instructions, waving people back. Paramedics followed, rushing forward with stretchers and medical bags. Make room," one of them called. Tara held her position, shielding the baby from the commotion. "She's hurt, but alive," she said quickly. "Please, she needs oxygen and warmth." The paramedics surrounded her, one holding a small thermal blanket, another checking the infant's breathing. They moved with trained precision, but even they paused when they saw the dog. "Is he with the baby?" one asked. Tara nodded. "He carried her here." The paramedic stared for a moment, disbelief flickering across his face. "Carried her?" She didn't answer. There wasn't time. Rex took one staggering step backward, then another. His legs trembled violently. Tara turned, reaching for him. "Don't you fall now," she said softly. "You did your job. Just hold on." He whined once, so quiet it was almost lost in the chaos, and then collapsed beside her, his head resting on the pavement. The crowd gasped again. Someone whispered, "He's dying." Tara's eyes filled with tears. "No," she said fiercely. "He's just tired." The baby began to cry louder, as if answering the plea. The sound cut through the noise of sirens and shouting, sharp and pure. Rex's ear twitched. His eyes fluttered open just enough to see the child being lifted into the ambulance. His tail moved once, a faint final wag. As the doors slammed shut and the vehicle sped away, Tara knelt beside the fallen shepherd. She pressed her hand gently against his fur. "You saved her," she whispered. "You saved her, you brave boy." The world around them blurred into sirens, flashing lights, and chaos. But in that small circle of silence between them, a sacred understanding took root. One that would not end here. The story of Rex had just begun. The sound of sirens was still distant, just a faint hum beyond the trees. But the park had already fallen into a tense stillness. Time itself seemed to pause. Only two beings moved in that frozen spring air, the trembling woman and the wounded dog. Tara's breath came shallow. She could see every rise and fall of the German shepherd's chest, each strained exhale from his dirt-matted fur. He stood tall despite the limp in his right leg, his body angled protectively over the small shivering bundle wrapped in the blood-streaked blanket. No one else dared to step closer now. The crowd that had once been shouting and filming stood back in a circle of hesitation, fear mixing with awe. Mothers clutched at their children. A jogger's phone slipped from his hand, screen lighting up the grass. Even the birds had gone silent. Tara slowly crouched, knees pressing into the damp soil. Her voice trembled, but her tone stayed low, calm, the kind of tone she used for frightened animals brought into the clinic. "Hey there, boy," she whispered. "It's okay. You did good. You're safe now." Rex's ears flicked at the sound of her voice. His jaw tightened around the blanket, unwilling to let go. His eyes, deep amber and filled with a kind of human pain, locked onto hers. Between them there was no sound, except the faint whimpering beneath the cloth. Tara extended her hand, palm open, fingers steady, though her heart was pounding. "I'm not going to hurt her," she said softly. "You brought her here for help, didn't you?" For a moment, Rex didn't move. The tension between them was a string drawn tight, one heartbeat away from snapping. Tara could see that he was bleeding, too. A gash near his shoulder, dirt clinging to it, the fur around it dark and sticky. The dog was exhausted, trembling on his feet, but his instinct to protect hadn't faded. Then a shift, subtle but unmistakable. Rex let out a long, shuddering exhale. His head lowered just slightly, as if surrendering to something beyond instinct. He took one careful step forward. The bundle touched the ground. He didn't let go right away, not until Tara spoke again, barely above a whisper. "You can trust me." It was only then that his jaw relaxed. The blanket fell gently from his mouth. The baby's face came into view, tiny, pale, streaked with dried blood and dirt. Its lips quivered, letting out a faint, broken cry. The sound sliced through the quiet, through every heart that stood watching. Several people gasped. Someone started to sob. Tara moved quickly but gently, her training kicking in. She checked the baby's breathing, shallow but present. The umbilical cord was gone. She saw bruises, small cuts, signs that this child had been left somewhere, abandoned, maybe even discarded. Her hands trembled as she pulled off her coat and wrapped it around the infant's body. "You're okay. You're okay, sweetheart," she murmured. "You're safe now." Rex sank down beside her, his body giving out at last. He collapsed into the grass, sides heaving, blood seeping slowly from his wound. His eyes didn't leave Tara or the baby. It was as though he needed to see the proof, to know the life he'd carried in his jaws had survived. Tara reached out and placed her hand on his head. His fur was warm, rough, damp with sweat and mud. "You saved her," she whispered. "Didn't you?" Rex blinked once, slow, deliberate, and then his eyes fluttered closed. His breathing steadied into shallow, rhythmic gasps. The sirens were louder now, closing in. Blue and red lights flickered faintly through the trees. Somewhere behind them, a dispatcher's voice shouted orders into the static of a radio. Tara looked around. The onlookers began to move again, murmuring, filming, calling out updates. But the world around her felt far away, muted, as if she and the dog and the baby existed in a small, sacred silence no one else could enter. She kept her hand on his head until the first responders arrived. When the paramedics knelt beside her, she didn't look up. "The baby's alive," she said quickly. "She needs warmth and oxygen. I think she's under a day old." Then softer, "And please, help him too." A young EMT looked down at the German shepherd, then back at her. "That your dog?" Tara shook her head, eyes still on Rex. "No," she said quietly, "but I think he just became everyone's." The medics took the baby first, wrapping her in a thermal blanket, rushing her toward the waiting ambulance. The infant's cry grew louder, stronger. It echoed through the park like a fragile note of hope. Rex tried to lift his head as if to follow, but his strength gave out halfway. Tara leaned closer, whispering, "It's okay, she's safe now." She brushed a hand gently down his muzzle. "You did what no one else could." As the stretcher for the dog arrived, animal control working beside the EMTs, a gust of spring wind carried the faint scent of cherry blossoms across the park. The petals scattered over the ground, some catching in Rex's fur. It looked almost like the world was bowing in silence for him. Tara stayed until both were put. The baby in one ambulance, the dog in another. The crowd slowly dispersed, still whispering, still shaken. Parents hugged their children a little tighter. Someone left flowers on the grass where Rex had stood. When the last of the sirens faded into the distance, the park was quiet again. But for everyone who had witnessed it, that morning would never again be quiet. It would always be remembered as the day a wounded German shepherd walked out of the woods, carrying a miracle. And somewhere deep in her chest, Tara felt something change. Not just sorrow, not just awe, something bigger, a kind of reverence for what she'd just seen, the bridge that can exist between a broken animal and a broken world. She looked down at her blood-stained hands, then toward the direction the ambulances had gone. Under her breath, she said again, almost to herself, "You saved her, didn't you?" By sunrise, the story had already left the park and entered the world. Phones buzzed, news vans rolled in, and headlines screamed across local feeds. "Dog saves baby in park. Unknown hero. German shepherd carries infant to safety." What had begun as a quiet spring morning in a small American town was now a headline on every major station by noon. Reporters stood outside the local hospital, their cameras aimed at the entrance where paramedics had carried in a tiny, shivering bundle wrapped in a blood-stained coat. Inside, nurses whispered between shifts, glancing toward the neonatal intensive care unit where a premature newborn now lay under the soft hum of machines. The little girl was alive, fragile, but fighting. Her skin had color again, her breathing steadier. The nurses, unable to keep calling her the baby from the park, had given her a name, Hope. Tara stood at the window of the NICU, eyes fixed on the infant, sleeping beneath a clear plastic dome. A soft band of white gauze wrapped around the baby's wrist, marked only with the words, "Baby girl, unknown mother." The monitors beside her blinked in steady rhythm, the most beautiful sound Tara had ever heard. One of the nurses walked up beside her, offering a small smile. "You were the one who found her, right?" Tara nodded slowly. "Not me," she said quietly. "He did." The nurse tilted her head. "The dog?" Tara nodded again, her throat tightening. "A German shepherd. He carried her all the way from the woods, and he wouldn't let anyone near until I came close." The nurse's eyes softened. "They said he's still alive. Animal control took him to the shelter clinic. They're doing surgery on him today." Tara's gaze dropped to the floor. She'd visited the shelter once already that morning before coming to the hospital. She could still smell the antiseptic and hear the rhythmic beep of machines echoing faintly through the concrete walls. Rex had been lying on a steel table, his breathing uneven, eyes half open but aware. He had looked at her when she spoke his name, and in that brief, haunting moment, she'd felt it again, that same connection, silent but unmistakable. Something about his eyes lingered in her mind, not just exhaustion, not pain, but grief, as if the dog was carrying a secret, something heavy that even words could never hold. She pressed a hand to the glass, watching the baby stir slightly beneath the incubator's glow. "You're safe now," she whispered, her voice trembling, "because of him." Across the hallway, a small television played the local news segment. Footage of the park filled the screen. The police tape, the crowd, the paramedics loading the baby into the ambulance. Then came a grainy shot of Rex being carried on a stretcher. Even through the low resolution, his eyes were clear, locked onto the baby in the distance. The anchor's voice spoke with polished sympathy. "Authorities are investigating how the newborn was left in the woods overnight. The German shepherd, believed to be a stray, was found carrying the infant, wrapped in a blanket. Both are receiving medical care. The baby, affectionately named Hope by hospital staff, is expected to survive." The camera cut to a short interview with a police officer. "We don't see things like this often," he said. "If that dog hadn't found her when he did, this could have ended very differently. We're calling him a hero." The segment ended, but Tara didn't move. Her eyes stayed on the frozen image of Rex on the screen. Dirt-covered, wounded, but noble. She couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just luck. That somehow fate had guided him to that baby. That maybe in his own way, Rex had been trying to tell the world something. Later that day, she drove back to the shelter. The building stood on the edge of town, plain gray, the kind of place most people didn't notice unless they had to. Inside, the air smelled faintly of disinfectant and wet fur. Volunteers moved quietly between cages, offering water, checking wounds. Tara signed in at the desk, flashing her ID badge from the clinic where she worked. The attendant nodded toward the back. "Third room on the right. He's resting." She walked softly down the corridor. The sound of muffled barking echoed faintly through the concrete walls. When she reached the room, she hesitated before opening the door. Rex lay on a blanket near the corner, an IV line running into his front leg. His fur had been shaved around the sutures. A cone collar rested beside him, though he wasn't wearing it. The vet must have trusted him enough not to fight it. "Hey, boy," Tara said softly, kneeling down. "It's me." Rex stirred, lifting his head slightly. His ears twitched at her voice. The light caught the bandage near his shoulder, stark white against the dark fur. His breathing was shallow but steady. She sat beside him, keeping her distance at first. "They're calling you a hero, you know," she said, smiling faintly. "You're on every news channel." Rex blinked slowly. His tail moved just enough to brush against the blanket. Tara reached into her bag and pulled out a folded photograph, a printout from the hospital bulletin board. It was a picture of Hope in her incubator, wrapped in pink cloth, a tiny hand resting near her face. Tara placed it on the floor beside him. "She made it," she whispered, "because of you." For a long while, Rex didn't move. Then, almost imperceptibly, he lowered his head onto his paws, eyes drifting to the photo. The muscles in his jaw relaxed, a soft sigh leaving his chest, a sound that felt almost like relief. Tara reached out, brushing her fingers gently through his fur. "You did more than save her," she said softly. "You gave her a chance." She sat with him until visiting hours ended, listening to the slow rhythm of his breathing, the hum of the fluorescent lights above. Before leaving, she leaned closer and whispered, "I'll come back tomorrow, I promise." When she stepped outside, evening. Sunlight poured across the parking lot, long and golden. A small group of reporters was gathered near the entrance talking about the miracle dog. One of them turned to her as she passed. "Excuse me, miss, were you the woman who found them?" Tara hesitated, glancing toward the shelter doors behind her. "I didn't find them," she said quietly. "He found her." The reporter frowned slightly. "Then what should we call him?" Tara paused, her eyes softening. "Call him Rex," she said, "because heroes deserve names." The next morning, the front page of the local paper bore a photo of the dog lying peacefully in his shelter bed. A gentle headline stretched across the top: "Rex and Baby Hope, the miracle in the park." But even as the town celebrated, Tara couldn't shake a quiet unease, a feeling that this story wasn't finished yet. Because when she looked into Rex's eyes, she didn't just see a hero. She saw a secret waiting to be told. By the time the sun rose again over Willow Creek, the park was quiet, cordoned off by yellow police tape that fluttered softly in the morning breeze. The laughter and chatter that had filled it just a day before were gone, and with their place came the low hum of generators, camera shutters clicking, and the crunch of boots pressing into damp soil. Detective Evan Harris stood near the edge of the woods, his coffee untouched, eyes tracing the faint tire tracks that led off the main trail and disappeared into the trees. He crouched, running a gloved finger along the grooves in the dirt. "These weren't here before the rain last night," he murmured. "Fresh." Beside him, Officer Lynn took notes. "Could be from the same vehicle we found burned down by the creek," she said. "Engines melted. V-N-E-I-N, unreadable." Harris stood, his gaze sharpening. Someone didn't want this car identified. The two walked deeper into the woods, the early light filtering through branches in fractured gold. The air still carried a faint, bitter scent of smoke. Ahead, a tow truck idled beside what was left of the car, a twisted skeleton of metal and ash. The grass around it was scorched in a rough circle, charred earth still steaming faintly in spots. A forensics officer approached, holding out a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, its edges tarnished from the heat, but the engraving still visible, M.H. Harris took the bag carefully, his expression hardening. "Where was this found?" "About 20 feet from the vehicle," the tech replied. "Near a footprint. Looks like a woman's size." Harris studied the bracelet for a long moment. "M.H.," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Get this cross-checked against any missing persons in the last 72 hours. The tech nodded and hurried off. As the team continued to sweep the area, Harris walked toward a nearby embankment. That's where they'd found the torn remains of a child's blanket, the same pattern the baby had been wrapped in. The realization struck him like a silent weight. Whoever that woman was, she hadn't abandoned her baby. Something else had happened here. He looked up as Officer Lynn approached, holding a folder. "Preliminary match came through," she said. "Maya Hill, 32, former K-9 unit with the county sheriff's office, reported missing 2 days ago along with her infant daughter. Harris's jaw tensed. A K-9 officer. He glanced toward the path leading back to the park. And the dog? Lynn hesitated. That German shepherd from the news, Rex. Records show he was part of her unit before she retired last year. Microchip data is still being processed, but it's looking like a match. Harris exhaled slowly, staring at the bracelet in his hand. So the baby's hers. And that dog carried her to safety. Lynn nodded. Looks that way. For a long while, neither of them spoke. The forest around them was still, save for the distant rustle of leaves and the buzz of radios. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for the truth to surface. Finally, Harris broke the silence. Run forensics on everything we've got. The car, the tracks, the soil samples. I want to know if anyone else was here, and get me a list of known associates. If Maya Hill was a cop, she might have made enemies. He looked back at the charred remains of the car. Whatever happened here, it wasn't an accident. Later that afternoon, the small-town police station buzzed with reporters, demanding answers. Harris brushed past them, clutching the file now thick with preliminary findings. Inside the briefing room, he spread the photos across the table. Images of the burned vehicle, the bracelet, and a blurred still from a park camera showing Rex limping out of the trees. The chief frowned. You're saying the dog carried the baby nearly a mile through rough terrain? Yes, sir, Harris replied. Judging from his injuries, he burned his paws and tore muscle tissue during the run. That dog didn't stop until he reached help. The chief rubbed his forehead and the mother? No sign of her body yet, but there's enough blood residue in the car to suggest someone was badly hurt. Across the table, an officer muttered, Maybe she tried to get away from someone. Whoever torched that car didn't want her found. Harris nodded grimly. And Rex, he must have seen it happen. That sentence hung in the air, heavy, unsettling, because if Rex had seen it, then somewhere inside that wounded animal was the memory of what happened that night. A witness. With no voice, as evening fell, Harris drove out to the animal shelter. He wanted to see the dog. Not as a headline, but as evidence. When he arrived, Tara was already there, sitting quietly beside Rex's cage. She looked up as Harris entered, her face drawn but determined. You're Detective Harris, right? She said softly. I saw you on the scene this morning. He nodded. You were there when they found the baby? Yes. Her eyes flicked toward Rex. He hasn't eaten much today, keeps waking up like he's remembering something. Harris crouched beside the cage, studying the German shepherd. Even with bandages covering half his body, there was strength in the animal's posture, a silent alertness that felt almost human. He's not just reacting, Harris murmured. He's guarding, Tara nodded. He was trained, you can tell, the way he watches every move, every sound. He's not scared, he's on duty. Harris's gaze softened. Rex belonged to a woman named Maya Hill, former K-9 handler. We think she may have been the baby's mother. Tara froze. Maya Hill? She looked down at Rex, her hand trembling slightly as she touched the edge of his fur. Then he wasn't lost. He was following orders. Harris met her eyes. Orders? Tara swallowed hard. When we found him, he wasn't just running. He was heading toward people, like he was looking for help. Maybe she told him to protect the baby. The detective didn't respond right away. He looked at Rex again, at the scars, the dirt, the quiet ache in his eyes, and somehow he knew Tara was right. The dog hadn't run away. He'd been carrying out his final command. Back at his office later that night, Harris reviewed the case files under the dim glow of his desk lamp. The photo of the bracelet, the baby, the burned car, and Rex. Each piece felt connected by something more than coincidence. He wrote 3 words in the margin of his notes. She trusted him. Then, beneath that, he obeyed. The case was no longer about a dog and a baby found in a park. It was about a promise, one that had carried through fire, through pain, through an unspoken loyalty that refused to die. And somewhere out there in the ashes and silence of the woods, the rest of that story was waiting to be uncovered. The night before the headlines, before the chaos in the park, there was only the sound of rain, not heavy, just enough to paint the road with reflections, city lights trembling in the puddles. A quiet rural highway cut through the dark woods, its edges swallowed by fog. Maya Hill drove alone. The clock on her dashboard flickered. 2:13 a.m. Her baby slept soundly in the back seat, wrapped in a faded yellow blanket. In the passenger seat sat Rex, his ears twitching with every sound beyond the glass. Maya glanced at him, smiling weakly. "Almost home, buddy," she murmured, her voice carrying that kind of tired warmth only mothers have. "You did good today." Rex tilted his head slightly, watching her hand rest on the gearshift, then turned back to the window. His reflection caught her gaze for a second. Alert, loyal, ready. Even off duty, he never relaxed completely. Once a K9, always a protector. The soft hum of the engine mixed with the faint cries of the forest. But then, a flash of headlights behind them. At first, Maya thought it was nothing, just another car. But when it stayed close, almost tailgating her through the bends, she felt that cold ripple down her spine. She slowed slightly. The other driver slowed too. "Easy, Maya," she whispered to herself. "Probably just someone lost." Then the car behind her swerved once deliberately. Its headlights flared white in her mirrors. Rex growled low and deep. Maya's hand gripped the wheel tighter. "Shh, it's okay, boy." But she didn't believe it herself. The next turn came fast, too fast. The road narrowed. The car behind her rammed her bumper. Metal screeched. The baby stirred, crying softly. "Stop it!" Maya shouted, slamming the horn. "What do you want?" Another hit, this time harder. The rear-view mirror cracked. Rex barked, feral now, throwing his weight toward the back seat. The baby's cries grew louder, frightened, confused. Maya's mind raced. She had no weapon, no signal, no one on this road for miles. She tried to speed up, but the engine sputtered. The impact had done something. The stranger's car pulled alongside her, window down just enough for her to glimpse a dark silhouette. A man, no face visible, but his intent clear. The gunshot shattered the silence. The front tire exploded. The steering wheel jerked violently. The car spun, metal grinding against asphalt, until it crashed into the trees. The airbags burst like thunder. For a moment, everything stopped. Only the hiss of steam and the soft, broken wail of a baby filled the air. Maya blinked through the blood in her eyes, her ears ringing. Smoke rose from the hood. The other car's lights faded into the distance. Gone. She turned her head painfully toward the back seat. The baby was alive, crying. Relief and terror collided in her chest. "Rex," she gasped. The dog crawled from the passenger seat, limping, glass in his fur, his eyes fixed on her, trembling but focused. She unbuckled herself, barely able to move. The heat from the engine was spreading. Fire began licking at the edges of the dashboard. "Maya Hill," she whispered, half to herself, half to remind herself she was still someone, still there. She reached for the back seat. The smoke thickened. The baby coughed weakly. With trembling hands, she pulled the yellow blanket tighter around her child. Her breathing was shallow now, sharp with pain. She looked at Rex, her partner, her last hope. "Protect her, Rex." Her voice broke. "You hear me? Protect her." Rex whined, pressing closer. "Go," she shouted, louder this time. "Now." She opened the door with the last of her strength, pushed the blanket-wrapped baby into his jaws. The smoke roared and the night filled with the crackling of burning leaves. Rex hesitated, for the first time in his life, torn between duty and love. He looked at her, eyes wide, refusing to move. Tears streamed down her soot-streaked face. "Go!" she screamed. "Save her!" Then came the explosion. Rex bolted into the forest, fire illuminating the path behind him. The baby whimpered softly in his mouth, her tiny hands peeking through the fabric. The forest closed around them to smoke, rain, and the faint echo of Maya's voice fading into the night. He ran until his legs gave out, until the world was only mist and pain, until the flames behind him were just a red memory. And when dawn broke, pale and gray, he was still running. The city's edge appeared ahead, a park he somehow remembered. His body shook with exhaustion, paws bleeding, fur scorched. He stumbled into the open field and laid the bundle gently on the grass. The baby moved, crying weakly. Rex nudged her once. Alive, that was enough. And then, sirens in the distance. The flashback dissolves here, the screen softens. A faint image of Maya's bracelet, MH, glimmers on the ground by the wreckage, half buried in ash. Her final command lingers like an echo through time. "Protect her, Rex." The shelter was quiet at night, too quiet for Tara's heart to rest. The hum of the oxygen machine and the soft beeping of the monitors filled the small recovery room where Rex lay. His fur was shaved in patches, stitches lining his side like scars of war. The smell of antiseptic mixed with the faint scent of wet fur and rain. He had survived the surgery. Barely. A fractured rib, deep lacerations, and smoke inhalation. The vet said it was a miracle. But to Tara, it felt like something more than that. Like the dog wasn't just surviving, he was holding on to a promise. She sat beside his kennel, elbows resting on her knees, exhaustion shadowing her face. It had been 3 days since the park. 3 days since the story exploded across every screen in the city. Hero dog saves abandoned baby. Everyone had moved on to the miracle. The baby named Hope, the smiling nurses, the city's relief that something pure still existed in the world. But Tara couldn't move on because Rex hadn't just found a baby. He knew her. She saw it in the way he looked at her that morning. Not curiosity, not confusion, but a kind of desperate recognition. Tara adjusted the blanket around her shoulders and leaned closer to the kennel. "Hey, Hero," she whispered softly. "You're safe now, okay?" Rex stirred, his paw twitching. A soft whimper escaped him. Low, broken, almost human. Then came another sound, a muffled bark in his sleep, followed by a growl that sent a chill through Tara's chest. He was dreaming, and whatever he saw, it wasn't peace. His breathing quickened, claws scraping weakly at the metal floor. Tara reached in carefully, laying her hand on his paw. "It's okay," she whispered again. "You did it. You saved her." But his body trembled harder. A low whine rose and in his throat. His eyes moved rapidly beneath his lids, trapped in some memory he couldn't escape. In his mind, the world was still burning. He saw the car, the fire, Maya's face, her voice cutting through the smoke. "Protect her, Rex!" He saw the flames take her. He saw himself running until his lungs screamed. And then, the baby's cry. Rex whimpered louder, shaking his head as if to chase it away. Tara's voice broke the nightmare. "Shh." She brushed his fur gently. "It's over now." His breathing slowed. The tension faded, but when he opened his eyes for a brief second, Tara saw something that froze her heart. Grief. Real, human-like grief. She sat back, staring at him, mind racing. "You weren't just some stray," she said softly. "Were you?" By morning, the story had reached every corner of the country. Reporters camped outside the shelter. Phones rang nonstop with donations and interview requests. But Tara kept everyone away. She'd volunteered for night duty, not just to guard Rex, but because she couldn't stop thinking about him. There was a story behind his eyes, one no one else wanted to hear. Between feedings and logging his vitals, she began digging. The police report described a burned vehicle near the park. A missing woman. A bracelet marked MH. The same night Rex was found. Maya Hill, age 29, single mother, former K-9 officer. Tara froze. A K-9 officer. Her gaze drifted to Rex, sleeping under the heat lamp. The scars on him and his muzzle, his discipline, the way he'd guarded the baby. It wasn't instinct. It was training. You were hers, she whispered. The thought hit her like light through smoke. The baby hadn't survived by luck. She'd been carried from fire by the one who obeyed a dying command. Protect her. Rain returned that night, tapping the shelter windows like restless fingers. Tara's eyes burned as she scrolled missing persons reports. Again, Maya Hill, last seen leaving a diner off Route 16 with her infant daughter. Burned wreckage found. No body recovered. She pictured it, the crash, the flames, Rex bursting through them, carrying the baby to safety. Somewhere out there was the man who caused it, and Rex had seen him. When she looked back, Rex was awake, meeting her gaze. Not afraid, but waiting, testing her. I know you saw something, she whispered, and I'm going to find out what happened to her. He blinked, then shifted his paw closer to her fingers. A quiet bridge formed between grief and resolve. You and me, Tara murmured. We've got work to do. The rain deepened. Rex's breathing steadied, but his half-open eyes reflected something unseen, a memory, a voice, a final command. Protect her. Morning brought silence heavy with unanswered questions. Tara waited outside the shelter, coffee trembling in her hands. A police cruiser rolled in. Detective Mark Harris stepped out, coat damp with mist. Ms. Bennett, he greeted, opening up a folder. The burned vehicle belonged to Maya Hill, single mother, former K-9 officer like you said. And the dog? Microchips fried from the fire, but everything matches. The injuries, smoke damage, direction he ran. If he escaped the crash, he carried that baby for nearly 2 miles. Tara shook her head. It wasn't an accident. Someone tried to kill them. Harris frowned. You think it's foul play? I know it is, she said. Rex remembers. If we take him back, maybe he'll show us. He hesitated, then looked at Rex again, scarred but steady, the nurse beside him refusing to give up. Finally, he nodded. All right, let's see what he remembers. By afternoon, his SUV wound down a dirt road lined with pine and silence. Rex sat in back, head on the window, paw trembling faintly. Tara kept a hand on his collar. Crash sites a mile ahead, Harris said. Still off limits. Rain washed away half the evidence. Rex lifted his head. His eyes sharpened. He knows, Tara said softly. They arrived at the clearing. The smell of burned rubber lingered in wet earth. A charred car door lay half buried in mud. Rex leapt out, sniffing, circling once, twice, then froze. He's tracking, Harris muttered. The dog moved toward a fence bordering a derelict farm, an old barn sagging under age. This wasn't in the report, Harris said. Fire crews never searched past here. Rex barked once, sharp, commanding, then began to dig. Rex, wait! Tara knelt, but he kept going, frantic yet deliberate, grief fueling every motion. Get a forensics team here, Harris radioed. Something glinted in the soil, a brass tag. Tara brushed it clean. K-9 unit, Rex, her breath caught. Oh my God! Harris's face hardened. He was her partner. Rex stepped back, panting, whined softly, low, raw, almost human. Tara placed a trembling hand on his fur. You brought us here for a reason. Harris eyed the barn, too quiet, too still. He motioned for them to stay and pushed the door open. The stench of gasoline hung thick. Flashlight beams swept over the floor, tire marks, a tarp, and a bracelet identical to the one found at the crash. M.H., he whispered. He stepped back, eyes grave. We're not looking at an accident anymore. Outside, Tara knelt beside Rex. He sat motionless, eyes fixed on the barn like he could still see the night unfold. The detective crouched beside him. "You did good, partner," he murmured. Rex turned his head, exhaling a weary sigh, relief and sorrow intertwined. The sun bled gold across the horizon, washing the fields in quiet light. Tara brushed his fur gently. "He remembers everything," she said. "Then we'll follow his memories," Harris replied. "Whatever happened that night, he's going to help us finish it." Rex rose, shaking the dirt from his paws, and walked toward the barn again, slowly, reverently, as though returning to a grave. Tara and Harris followed in silence, knowing the case had changed from finding a missing person to uncovering why she died. Somewhere between memory and justice, the loyal dog kept walking, guided not by command, but by love. Dusk fell, the air was thick, the earth holding its breath. Harris stood by an old willow tree, branches drooping like mourning hands. Tara knelt beside Rex, fingers tangled in his collar. The faint scent of smoke still lingered in his fur. "This is where he led us," she whispered. "He won't move." Rex stared at a patch of earth beneath the willow. A long, aching whine escaped him, half memory, half grief. "Mark it," Harris told the forensic team. The shovels bit into damp soil. Each metallic scrape echoed like a heartbeat. Tara's chest rose and fell with every strike. Then a dull clink. An officer knelt, brushing dirt aside. "Sir, we've got something." He held up a tarnished silver chain. A small heart-shaped pendant hung from it, initials faint but visible. "M.H." And Tara's hand covered her mouth. "Maya," Rex whimpered and pressed his nose to the necklace. Then he lay down beside it, resting his head on the chain, eyes closing. The field went silent. Even the wind stopped. Tara dropped to her knees, tears streaming. "Oh, Rex, you found her. You never stopped." Harris stepped closer, voice low. "It's her, no doubt." For Tara, the discovery wasn't evidence. It was devotion made visible. She looked at Rex, burned, scarred, but unbroken. The dog who had carried a baby through fire, who had remembered every sound, every scent, every loss. And beneath the weeping willow, with earth and sky folded into quiet witness, his mission was fulfilled. He had brought her to Mom. Now she saw the truth. He hadn't been running away. He'd been keeping a promise. She reached out, her hand resting on his back. His fur was still rough with soot, his heartbeat faint but steady beneath her palm. "You didn't just save her," she whispered. "Sus, you carried her mother's love." The detective turned away, pretending to check his radio, but Tara caught the glint of moisture in his eyes. No one spoke for a long time. Then one of the officers said softly, "There's more." He held out a small, scorched photo frame. The image barely visible. A woman in uniform, smiling, holding a baby in her arms. A German shepherd sat beside her, eyes proud and watchful. Tara recognized the smile instantly. It was gentle, brave, and familiar. "That's Maya," she said, voice breaking. "That's him." Rex lifted his head slightly, sniffing the air as if he could still sense her there. He licked the dirt where the necklace lay, then rested his head again. A silent goodbye. The detective crouched beside them. "We'll get her justice," he said quietly. "But right now, let him have this moment." And so they did. No one moved. No one spoke. Only the sound of the willows, branches swaying above them, brushing against the wind like soft fingers over a wound that would never fully heal. Tara leaned forward, pressing her forehead to Rex's. Her tears fell into the soil. "You kept your promise, boy. You never left her." Rex breathing slowed. The sunset washed his fur in gold, outlining him like a guardian made of light and loss. Harris finally broke the silence. "You ever wonder," he said softly, "if dogs feel the same kind of grief we do?" Tara nodded slowly. "Sometimes I think they feel it more. They don't question it, they just carry it. The detective stared at Rex, a faint sadness shadowing his face. Then this one's been carrying it a long time. They covered the small area again with care, marking it as a scene, but leaving the necklace right where Rex had found it. As the last light faded, the dog finally rose. Unsteady but determined, he turned once, looking back at the spot under the willow, and gave a quiet, mournful sound that felt like a prayer. Tara stood beside him, one hand gripping his leash but not pulling. "Come on, partner," she said softly. "Let's go home." He didn't move at first, just stood there, eyes locked on the grave, tail barely twitching. Then slowly he stepped forward. Each paw print left a mark in the earth, temporary, fragile, but real. As they walked back toward the road, Harris watched them in silence. A woman, a dog, and a ghost between them. 3 lives woven together by loss and love. When they reached the car, Tara looked up at the sky. The first stars had begun to appear, flickering faintly through the twilight. She glanced at Rex, who was staring out toward the willow one last time. "Goodbye, Maya," Tara whispered. "He kept his promise. You can rest now." Rex let out one soft, final sigh, then settled beside her. The faint chime of the silver pendant hanging in Tara's hand was the only sound left, a fragile melody carried by the wind. And under the old willow, the earth held its secret close. The place where love had been buried but never truly gone, the courthouse, was silent. The kind of silence that makes even a breath sound like thunder. Reporters filled the hallway, camera shutters clicking as the doors opened. The story everyone had been following, the dog who saved a baby, was about to take a darker turn. Tara stood in the witness area, her palms sweating despite the cool air conditioning. Beside her sat Rex, still wearing the small gauze wrap. His arm wrapped around his foreleg, his eyes scanning the room with sharp awareness. He was calmer now, his wounds healing, but there was something inside him that never did. Something raw, something remembering. Then the door at the far end opened. The man entered, flanked by 2 officers, tall, unshaven, his eyes cold. This was him, Evan Carter, Maya Hill's ex-partner, once charming, now accused of arson, assault, and possibly murder. The moment his boots hit the floor, Rex stiffened. His ears shot up, his chest rumbled with a low, primal growl. The entire courtroom froze. It wasn't a bark, it was deeper, the kind of sound only a dog makes when his soul recognizes danger, the same growl that echoes before lightning strikes, before the past returns to claim justice. The bailiff shouted, "Control that animal!" But Tara didn't move. She knelt beside Rex, resting a trembling hand on his shoulder. "It's okay, boy," she whispered, but even her voice shook, because she felt it too. The energy in the air, the way Rex's body trembled, not with fear, but memory. Evan glanced at the dog and smirked. That single look, a mug unbothered, made Rex's hackles rise higher. Judge Williamson's gavel hit once, twice. "Order in the court." Tara stood slowly. "Your Honor," she began, her voice soft but steady, "this dog isn't acting out. He's remembering." Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Cameras zoomed in. The judge looked skeptical. "Ms. Avery, are you suggesting the animal recognizes the defendant?" Tara took a deep breath. "Yes, sir. Rex was with Maya Hill the night she disappeared. He carried her baby through fire and smoke, and he was found with burn marks matching the timeline of that same attack." The prosecutor stepped forward holding a file. "For the record, Your Honor, the forensic evidence places the defendant's vehicle near the site of the burned car, and this," he placed a photo on the stand, "was recovered at that site. The same tire tread pattern as the defendant's truck." Evan's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Tara's eyes didn't leave him. "You think animals forget?" she asked quietly. They don't. They remember every scent, every heartbeat of the people they love, and the ones who took them away. The judge motioned for her to continue. She knelt beside Rex again, speaking not to the court, but to the animal who had carried both tragedy and hope. Rex, she said softly, is this the man who hurt Maya? Rex's head tilted, a pause heavy enough to make the whole room hold its breath. Then slowly his lips pulled back, exposing teeth. Not in anger, but recognition. A gasp spread through the spectators. Evan's face turned pale. He looked away, mumbling something under his breath, but it was too late. The truth wasn't in the evidence. It was in the silence that followed. The judge folded his hands. While the dog's response cannot serve as testimony, he said, it gives this court a vivid picture of the trauma that took place. Tara turned to the jury, voice trembling but clear. Rex isn't just a witness, Your Honor. He's a survivor. When Maya Hill's car burned, she gave him one command: protect her. He obeyed that order with his life, and he's still obeying her now by refusing to let this man walk free. Silence. Then Evan snapped. That's ridiculous. It was an accident. I didn't... He froze. The prosecutor leaned forward. You didn't what, Mr. Carter? Evan's mask broke. His voice cracked. She wouldn't listen. I just wanted to scare her. The courtroom erupted. Cameras flashed as the judge called for order. Rex didn't move. Steady, calm, mission complete. Tara knelt beside him, pressing her forehead to his. You did it, she whispered to it. You kept your promise. The gavel fell, heavy with final truth. Guards led Evan away. Rex's eyes followed, unyielding but peaceful, as if to say, justice isn't vengeance, it's peace. After the courtroom emptied, Tara sat alone in the pale morning light. Rex leaned against her leg and sighed, the deep exhale of a soul finally at rest. A reporter approached. Miss Avery, what will happen to the dog now? Tara looked down at him. He's going home, she said softly, where he should have been all along. Outside, the wind lifted the courthouse flag. For the first time since the fire, the story ended in light. Somewhere under the willow tree where Maya's necklace had been found, the world exhaled. Rex paused, gazing at the horizon. Tara almost saw it, a woman's silhouette whispering through the wind. Protect her. Rex wagged his tail. Mission complete. Winter melted into spring. Daffodils bloomed outside the Willow Creek Animal Shelter, sunlight spilling across clean floors and warm air. Tara entered, a bundled baby in her arms. 6 months since the chaos that had changed everything. The world had named her Hope. She was healthy now, bright-eyed and curious, but today wasn't about hospitals or headlines. It was about reunion. Down the hall, behind a half-open door, lay Rex. His coat was scarred, but his eyes still alive. At the sound of the footsteps, his head lifted. Then he saw her. Hey, Rex, Tara whispered. It's been a while. His tail moved once, then again. Slow recognition. But he wasn't looking at her. Hope made a soft coo. Rex froze, then surged upright, tail wagging wildly. A low, trembling sound escaped him, part bark, part cry. Tara knelt, voice shaking. Do you remember her? You carried her through the fire. Hope reached toward the kennel bars. Rex pressed close, whining softly. Staff gathered. Detective Harris stopped mid-stride. Let him out, Tara whispered. The latch clicked. The door opened. Rex stepped forward, nails tapping, breathing heavy with emotion. Tara crouched, lowering the baby. It's okay, she said. Go ahead. Hope reached out, touching his muzzle. Time dissolved. No cameras, no audience. Only a dog and the child he had saved. Rex pressed his nose to her hand, a soft, broken whine trembling in his throat. Tears streamed down Tara's face. Even the officers wiped their eyes. Reporters peeked in quietly, filming what would later circle the world, not for fame, but for truth. Rex licked Hope's fingers, then nuzzled her cheek. She giggled, the sound filling the room like sunlight. Tara whispered, "You did it, Rex. You saved her. You never forgot." Detective Harris murmured, "He carried her memory every day." Outside, the clouds parted. Sunlight poured through the window, catching Hope's hair. Rex looked up, blinking into the light, then lay down beside Tara, pressing his head to her leg. Hope's tiny hand rested in his fur as she drifted to sleep. Tara stroked his head. "She's safe now. You can rest." Rex's eyes closed slowly, breath even, peaceful. "That's the ending," a cameraman whispered, but Tara knew it wasn't. It was the beginning of something new, not of tragedy, but of faith, of love that remembers. Weeks later, the courthouse smelled faintly of wood and paper, like time stored between its walls. Tara sat quietly, palms pressed together over a trembling stack of documents. Beside her, Rex rested his head on her boot, eyes alert. The clerk called Tara Bennett. She rose and followed into the small courtroom. Each echo of her steps carried the weight of every sleepless night since finding hope, fear, chaos, and the fragile courage to begin again. The judge, a kind woman with gray-streaked hair, looked up. "Ms. Bennett, I've read your statement. The department recommends temporary guardianship." Tara nodded. "Yes, Your Honor, until family can be located. And the child, Hope, is doing well?" "She's adjusting," Tara said softly. "She smiles when she sees the dog." The judge's gaze fell to Rex. "Ah, the hero himself?" "He saved her life," Tara said. "Twice, if you count the night he brought her to me." The judge smiled faintly. "Most cases are paperwork, not miracles. But sometimes the law must follow the heart." She signed the papers. "Temporary guardianship of Hope Bennett is granted. And as for the dog," she looked up. "Congratulations, Ms. Bennett. Rex is officially yours." The world fell into silence. Tara blinked through tears. Relief, pure and weightless. Rex's tail thumped once, twice. She knelt, hugging him. "We did it, buddy. We really did." Outside, spring wind carried the scent of rain and grass. Hope waited in her stroller, cooing beneath a yellow blanket. Rex trotted beside them, tail high. That night, the apartment felt warmer. Tara had rearranged everything. A crib by the window, paper stars spinning above it. Rex padded across the floor, settled beside the crib like a soldier on watch. Tara stroked his head. "You're her guardian now," she whispered, "and I guess I'm yours." Hope stirred, sighed, and slept again. Tara lingered, watching the gentle rise and fall of the baby's chest. She thought of everything that led here, the trial, the headlines, the nights of doubt, and realized something simple yet profound. Love, once given, never truly fades. The clock ticked softly. The city outside hummed with life. Somewhere in that vast, indifferent world, she had carved out this fragile, sacred piece. Rex lay down beside the crib, his chin resting on his paws. His eyes began to close, and as they did, a beam of light from the street lamp slipped through the curtain, falling across his golden fur. It shimmered faintly, like sunlight underwater. Tara turned off the lamp and sat in the chair by the window. The night air drifted in, carrying with it the faint scent of jasmine. She looked out over the city, the same skyline that once felt like a cage, now felt like possibility. For the first time in months, her chest didn't ache. She realized then that healing didn't come with an announcement or applause. It came quietly in moments like this, when the world wasn't watching, when love was enough to fill the silence. Her eyes found the baby again. "Hope," she whispered. "That name suits you." Rex stirred slightly, his tail brushing against the floor. Tara smiled faintly. "And you, Rex, you're the reason she's here, the reason I'm here." She leaned back, letting her eyes close. The steady rhythm of two heartbeats, one from the crib, one from the floor, blended into a single sound. The first rays of morning slipped through the blinds. Sunlight spilled across the room, touching everything, the worn floorboards, the soft blanket, the sleeping faces. It caught on the gold of Rex's fur, the pale blue of Hope's onesie, and the quiet peace on Tara's face. In that light, everything felt whole again. No crowds, no fear, just the quiet truth that somehow, against all odds, a wounded woman, a lost baby, and a dog who refused to give up had found one another, a family, not by blood but by choice. And sometimes that's the only kind of miracle that matters. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and freshly cut grass. A small town square had been transformed for the occasion. Rows of folding chairs gleamed in the sun, and a makeshift stage had been set up in front of the town hall. Red, white, and blue bunting fluttered gently, stirred by a spring breeze. People gathered, firefighters in crisp uniforms, police officers with polished badges, local officials, and townsfolk who had followed the story from the beginning. Cameras from local news crews dotted the crowd, capturing the scene, but it felt intimate, like the whole town had come to witness something profoundly human. Tara stood near the stage, her hand resting lightly on Rex's fur. He sat beside her, his posture regal despite the small limp in his back leg, a silent reminder of the fire, the chaos, and the bravery that had carried him through. His eyes scanned the crowd, alert yet calm, as if he could feel the anticipation buzzing through the square. The mayor stepped forward, a tall man with a kind face that had been softened by years of public service. He cleared his throat, and the chatter of the crowd subsided into a respectful silence. "Today," he began, voice carrying clearly across the square, "we honor a hero, one whose courage reminds us that bravery does not always come in uniform, nor always in human form." Whispers rippled through the audience as the mayor continued, recounting the events that had led to this moment. A newborn child, abandoned and in danger, saved by the unlikeliest of guardians. A dog who carried life through fear and fire, a reminder that heroism is measured not by medals but by acts of love, loyalty, and instinct. Rex, ears pricked, watched Tara. He seemed to understand the gravity of the moment, tail moving in small, deliberate swishes. When the mayor held up a small, polished medal, a hush fell over the crowd. "This," the mayor said, "is the Medal of Valor. Today it belongs to Rex, whose actions remind us all that heroes come in many forms." A volunteer stepped forward with a velvet cushion, and the medal gleamed under the sun. Tara knelt, taking the small harness and fastening the medal gently around Rex's neck. He sat perfectly still, as if aware that this was no ordinary moment. When the medal rested against his chest, glinting in the light, a collective sigh passed through the crowd, soft, reverent, almost sacred. Tara rose slowly, clearing her throat. Her voice carried across the square, steady but tinged with emotion. "Heroes don't always wear uniforms," she said, eyes glancing down at Rex, who shifted slightly under her gaze. "Sometimes they have fur." A quiet wave of emotion washed over the crowd. Children clutched their parents' hands. Elderly citizens blinked rapidly, some wiping tears from their cheeks. Even the toughest firefighters and police officers who had faced disasters and danger countless times found themselves momentarily undone. The ceremony continued with speeches, each one echoing the extraordinary bond between human and animal, courage and compassion. One firefighter recounted how he had seen Rex limping through the park, refusing to let anyone near the blanket he carried, standing as both protector and witness. Another officer shared the painstaking investigation that had confirmed Rex's heroics and highlighted the small but profound decisions that led to Hope's survival. Throughout it all, Tara remained at Rex's side, stroking his fur, murmuring small reassurances. He leaned into her touch, tail flicking faintly, as though to say, It's okay, we did it together. The mayor concluded the speeches with a final remark. Let this day remind us that valor is not only found in courage under fire, but in the quiet persistence to protect, to love, and to carry hope when all else seems lost. The crowd erupted into applause, but it was more than polite recognition. It was awe. People cheered, some whistled, others clapped until their hands hurt, but all eyes were on Rex. Cameras flashed, capturing a dog who had become a symbol of resilience, loyalty, and the kind of bravery that transcends species. After the applause, a moment of silence fell, a heartbeat of reflection. Tara knelt beside Rex, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "You're the bravest dog I've ever met," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. "Thank you for everything." Rex rested his head against her shoulder, eyes closing briefly. He exhaled a soft sigh, tired but proud. Even amid the cheers, he was aware of something deeper, the bond that had begun on that quiet, tragic morning in the park, strengthened by nights of fear, moments of discovery, and finally, the recognition he had earned. Children approached cautiously, offering shy pats and soft whispers of admiration. One little girl asked, "Can he talk to us?" Tara smiled, shaking her head gently. "Nobody speaks louder than any words could. He saved a life, and that says everything you need to know." Photographers asked for pictures, reporters jotted notes, capturing every detail, the limp, the golden fur, the gleaming metal. Yet through it all, Tara felt the intimacy of the moment. Rex wasn't just a story. He was her companion, a silent witness to love, loss, and triumph. The ceremony drew to a close, and the crowd slowly dispersed, leaving behind a quiet that felt fuller than before. Birds chirped in the trees lining the square, and the sun filtered through the budding branches, spotlighting Rex in a halo of light. He sat there, steady and calm, chest out, medal glinting, a hero not by obligation but by choice. Tara whispered again, brushing a stray leaf from his fur. "You're more than a hero, Rex. You're family." He nuzzled her hand, tail thumping softly on the ground. For a moment, the world seemed perfect, quiet, warm, and right. The small town, with all its chaos and beauty, had witnessed something rare. A dog whose courage had touched the hearts of everyone who had seen him act, and a woman who had recognized that courage as more than instinct. It was love in motion. As they walked off the stage together, Tara and Rex passed the rows of empty chairs, each one a reminder of those who had come to honor the quiet, steadfast bravery that often goes unnoticed. And in the soft hum of the town settling back into its rhythm, one thing was clear. Heroes don't always wear uniforms, but their legacy lingers long after the applause fades. Sunlight caught the medal once more, reflecting on Rex's eyes, steady, deep, and full of unsaid stories. And in that moment, the town, the dog, and the woman standing beside him knew that this was only the beginning of a life marked by love, protection, and unwavering loyalty. Winter had settled over the small town with a quiet, unassuming grace. Snow dusted the rooftops and lined the branches of the bare trees, sparkling faintly under the pale morning sun. The streets were empty, save for the occasional crunch of footsteps against frost-hardened snow, or the distant murmur of a child's laughter echoing through the crisp air. Inside the cozy, warmly lit home of Tara and Hope, life moved at a gentler pace, a rhythm shaped by years of healing love and the constant presence of a remarkable guardian. Rex, now aged and slowed by time, lay curled beside the fireplace. His fur, once a gleaming gold and black, had faded in places to soft silver. His limbs moved stiffly, a subtle limp marking the passage of years, but his eyes still held the same deep, unwavering focus that had once guided him through fire and chaos. The faint warmth from the fire flickered across his face, casting shadows that danced over the lines of a life well lived. Hope, now a small girl with chestnut curls, tiptoed past the old shepherd, her stuffed bear clutched tight. She moved with the careful grace of one who knew how fragile age could be. When Rex lifted his head, ears twitching, her hand reached out. He leaned into her touch with a sigh that spoke of years spent protecting and loving. From the doorway, Tara watched, her eyes softened by time. She still remembered the day he'd limped into her life, carrying baby Hope in a blanket. Terrified, yet trusting. Now, though years had weighed him down, he was still her steadfast guardian. The afternoon light streamed across the floor, catching Hope's smile and the soft thump of Rex's tail. The house was peaceful, warm, alive with the rhythm of family. Yet as evening settled, the calm shifted. Rex's breathing grew shallow, his sighs turned final. Tara felt the air change, tender comfort giving way to something sacred and heavy. Kneeling beside him, she whispered, "It's okay, old friend. You've done more than anyone could ask." Rex lifted his head one last time, meeting her gaze. In that silent exchange lived all the courage and love of a life well spent. Tara pressed her forehead to his, feeling his heartbeat slow under her palm. Hope knelt beside him, arms wrapped around his neck. "I love you, Rex. You're my hero." The clock chimed softly. The fire gave one last pop. Rex exhaled, a gentle, peaceful release, his head resting toward the door as if still guarding his family. Tara's tears came then, mingling sorrow with gratitude. She stroked his fur, whispering stories of his bravery, the day he'd carried Hope through the woods, the countless ways he'd protected them. Each memory pulsed with devotion, the quiet heroism of love asking for nothing in return. Hope's eyes were red but shining. "Will he be okay?" she whispered. "He's okay, sweetheart," Tara said, her voice trembling. "He's where he's always wanted to be, watching over us." The room fell into a stillness too deep for words. Outside, snow drifted down in slow, reflective silence. Firelight danced across the walls, casting long shadows that seemed to guard the room itself. Echoes of the day Rex had first appeared with a crying baby in his jaws. The circle had closed, fear to peace, chaos to love. Tara held him for a long time, speaking softly of gratitude and hope. Each memory was part of a long thread. The panic in the park, the hospital nights, the reunions and tears, all leading here. When her sobs quieted, she covered him with a soft blanket, smoothing it gently. His body faced the door, ever the sentinel. Hope's small voice broke the silence. "Goodbye, Rex." Tara placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. The fire burned low, bathing the room in amber light. Though his body lay still, his spirit lingered in the warmth in their hearts. In the home he had guarded, in that tender tableau, life mirrored its beginning. A mother and child, the echo of loyalty, the fragility of love. The camera would linger on the empty rug, the glowing hearth, the door framing the winter night, a home forever changed by a dog who embodied devotion. And into that quiet, Tara whispered, "Thank you, Rex. Always our guardian." Spring returned. The town bloomed in shades of green and pink beneath the willow by the park, where Rex had once watched Hope play. A small grave lay tended with care. Flowers, favorite toys, and bones adorned the mound, a humble shrine to the dog who had saved a child, and a mother's heart. Hope, now older, walked toward it carrying daffodils and tulips. She knelt and arranged them with reverent precision. Sunlight filtered through the willow's branches, scattering gold across her hair. She traced the carved words. Rex, guardian, hero, friend. "Thank you, Rex," she whispered, "for finding me, for keeping me safe." Memories rose like sunlight through fall. The woods, the warmth of his fur, the long nights he'd lain beside her crib. Every image carried the imprint of a love beyond words. Behind her, Tara watched silently. She had seen the bond form, the loyalty that transcended understanding. Her heart ached with pride and grief. Rex had given everything without expecting anything back. The wind stirred the willow leaves, a musical whisper through the air. Birds sang, children laughed in the park beyond. Life moved forward, yet something of him remained here, breathing through the branches, resting beneath the earth. Hope touched the soil lightly as if to connect. She imagined Rex there, ears perked, eyes bright, guarding still. Tears welled but did not fall. "You taught me to be brave," she said softly, "to love and to care. I'll never forget you." Tara knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "He'd want you to live fully," she murmured, "to laugh, to grow, to be happy, just like the girl he saved." Hope nodded, leaning into her mother's warmth. Together they out beneath the willow, the air thick with memory and quiet joy. The scene widened. The mother and daughter, the grave beneath the tree, sunlight flickering through green leaves. Around them, life pulsed. Dogs chasing balls, children running, the park alive again. Hope placed the final flower, then stood brushing her hands clean. The spring breeze lifted her hair as she looked back once more. "Goodbye, Rex," she whispered. "Thank you for finding me." The camera rose slowly, following her through the dappled light. Laughter echoed, mingling with the rustling leaves. It was the sound of life enduring, of courage passed down from one soul to another. A final narration drifted over the scene, soft and resonant. In every act of loyalty there lives a story too human to be forgotten. And with that, the story concluded, not with an ending, but with the continuation of life, the eternal cycle of hope, courage, and love, forever marked by a dog who had given everything to save a child, leaving a legacy that would endure in hearts and memories for generations to come. Stories like Rex's remind us of the quiet, unwavering love that animals bring into our lives. German shepherds, in particular, carry a loyalty and courage that feels almost human, bridging the gap between instinct and devotion. Watching a dog protect, comfort, or simply sit faithfully by our side teaches us something profound about trust, empathy, and the gentle bonds that shape our hearts. If you've ever wondered how to connect more deeply with your own dog, there are wonderful resources out there that explore training, understanding body language, and fostering emotional trust. I've found that taking just a few moments each day to truly observe and listen can open doors you never imagined. It's not about tricks or commands. It's about understanding, presence, and the quiet joy of companionship. For anyone who treasures these moments, I encourage you to explore ways to deepen your connection with your furry friend. Even small gestures, a shared walk, a gentle word, a quiet cuddle, can create memories and trust that last a lifetime. Your dog is more than a pet. They're a companion, a guardian, and a teacher of love.